Billionaire's heart transformed after discovering little black girl at daughter's grave this eye. Ethan Wells stood at the edge of his daughter's grave, feeling the weight of the world pressing down on his shoulders. The immaculate headstone gleamed in the sunlight, a cruel contrast to the darkness engulfing his soul. It seemed absurd to think he could invent technology that changed lives while he couldn't save the one spark that made his life worth living. Gone were the enchanted days of his vibrant daughter, replaced by a suffocating silence filled with whispered grief and stinging guilt. The laughter that once filled his home had vanished, suffocated by tragedy. Every week, Ethan returned to Lily's grave, a ritual that felt more like punishment than solace. Rocking in the gilded cage of wealth, he felt hollowed out, an empty shell lamenting failures of retaining the one thing that mattered. He was a titan in tech, revered and feared, yet here, in this place of loss, he was stripped bare. When he glanced up, though, laughter floated through the air, unexpected and so out of place. Aisha, a young black girl no older than 8, played with a rusted tin can and a stick near a grave several feet away. Her unrestrained joy exuded a vitality he hadn't known in years. His gut twisted. How could this child be so carefree in a cemetery? Wasn't she aware of the darkness? But that laughter, oh, it tore through the numbness, astonishing him with life he no longer possessed. The echo of her innocence cracked open something deep within him, igniting memories of his own daughter's giggles while they played. A wave of familiarity gripped him, a connection distilled by grief. Could he, a man burdened by his loss, come to care for another child? Was that even right? Before he could unravel his thoughts further, the lure of the girl became undeniable. After weeks of hesitation, he approached her. She smiled shyly, humor flickering in her eyes like an old Pixar movie. "You're the guy who makes computers?" she asked, her voice sweet and unassuming. The question felt both an invitation and a challenge. A naive innocence lit her face. How could he respond? Something like that, he finally managed, unsure if he could hope for anything but misunderstanding. As he learned about her life, the dangers she faced, the struggles without her own family, every revelation tugged at him. There was an undeniable kinship. He understood loss, but she was also a living testament to strength and resilience. Yet, would his assistance matter in her world? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As the weeks turned into months, Ethan started to mentor Aisha, helping her envision a renovated community space that would bring joy to her neighborhood. The sharp division between his affluent world and hers became increasingly apparent. Yet, how could he justify his past decisions knowing they may have contributed to her pain? Guilt churned his stomach. His company's technology had, perhaps unknowingly, fed cycles of exploitation in communities like Aisha's. Should he confront his peers, risk his reputation, and fight the very establishment that had built his fortune? The anxiety coiled tightly within him, constricting as he considered this crossroads. Choose comfort or accountability? A haunting fear gripped him. Would he ever be free of the weight of his choices? And there was Aisha, buoyant in spirit yet carrying the unbearable burden of her reality. Each smile she offered was a silent reminder of the justice that wasn't there, and she deserved more than he had the courage to give. Torn and frustrated, Ethan felt the enormity of change pressing in around him like a vice, the questions spiraling louder. Could he act for her, for justice, and in doing so, redeem his own shattered existence? The extremes of his internal battle loomed like storm clouds as he stood at the crossroads, uncertainty overwhelming him. Would he step into the light or remain shrouded in his shadowed grief? Ethan woke each morning with a gnawing sense of purpose, the tension in his chest a reminder of his disparate worlds. Despite the haze of sorrow that still shrouded his existence, Aisha's laughter resonated in his mind, an enduring spark urging him toward the moral awakening he now desperately sought. He couldn't erase the past, but he could redefine his future, a chance to intervene in a system that had once robbed him of joy and was now threatening to strangle an innocent child. Days morphed into weeks, each one filled with meetings where cutting-edge technology was praised without regard for its consequences. The serene conference rooms echoed with discussions around algorithms and profit margins. Yet, amid the sterile calculations, a deep-rooted unease gnawed at him. Standing as the architect of his fortune, he could no longer pretend ignorance. They all knew the disparity they contributed to, knowingly or not. One afternoon, in the stillness of his high-rise office, the phone call he had long anticipated came, a formal invitation to a gala hosted by the industry's elite. The same faces that celebrated innovation and high profit margins would gather to toast their latest conquests. Ethan felt the weight of the invitation like a chain binding him to a past he wished to escape. It was time for a reckoning. The disparity between his life and Aisha's tugged violently at his conscience. Could he confront his peers? Could he turn their admiration into a catalyst for change? This gala offered him a platform, a chance to illuminate the realities faced by children in communities like Aisha's. But doubt seeped into his thoughts. Would he be heard? Would they simply dismiss him as an outlier whose guilt had propelled him into misguided activism? Still, as he pondered his next move, visions of Aisha flickered in his mind. Her vibrant smile, undimmed by hardship, anchored him. She deserved more than his proximity and mentorship. She deserved an advocate in a world that often silenced young voices. Gathering courage, he reached for his notebook, a collection of ideas and plans he had drafted while reflecting on their conversations. Together, they had conceptualized a digital space that would allow youths like Aisha to share their stories, engage in learning opportunities, and secure resources that could uplift their community. Fueled by a burgeoning determination, he decided he must present this vision at the gala. He could no longer shield himself from confrontation. Utilizing all his technological prowess, he would create an app that could bridge the vast divide between wealth and despair. After careful consideration, he prepared a presentation. It would not just reflect the needs of an overlooked community but also serve as a stark reminder to his peers of their moral responsibilities. They needed to be awakened from their comfortable complacency, confronted with the realities their technological advancements had often ignored. The night of the gala arrived, adorned in glitz and glamour, far removed from the stark realities outside its walls. As he stepped onto the stage, Ethan felt the familiar surge of anxiety wash over him. The ambience pulsated with self-congratulatory remarks, and he could almost feel the collective apathy bloating up the room. But as he began to speak, an undeniable fervor fueled his words, transforming his fear into resolute conviction. What does innovation mean if we leave behind those most in need? Today, I present not just an app, but a plea for humanity infused in our technological endeavors. As he locked eyes with industry leaders, the atmosphere shifted. Was this what he had always craved, the courage to expose uncomfortable truths, to confront their complacency? The applause that followed was thunderous, but in his heart, Ethan knew it was only the beginning. Yet, even as he basked in the moment, an ominous question loomed large: would he be met with genuine support or pushback from those invested in maintaining the status quo? Would his attempt to change the conversation invite hostility, or would it spark a movement? As the fluctuations of emotion ached within him, he braced for the culmination of actions that would follow this defiant stance. Though hope flickered, so did trepidation. The moment of truth had arrived. Could he withstand the fallout from his bold pursuit of justice for Aisha? Ethan opened his eyes to the faint glow of his office's ambient lighting, remnants of last night's adrenaline coursing through his veins. The echoes of applause still reverberated in his mind, but they were muffled by the simmering anxiety that had replaced it. As daylight seeped through the blinds, the momentary triumph felt eerily distant. He had broken free from the confines of silence only to wade deeper into turbulent waters. His phone buzzed relentlessly, messages flooding in from colleagues and industry peers. Invitations to meet, requests for collaboration, and whispers of potential investment opportunities inundated his screen. Each notification represented an intersection of possibility and an undertone of skepticism. They desired to engage, yet Ethan questioned their motives. Were these invitations an acknowledgement of his vision, or merely attempts to co-opt his ideas for their gain, he cleared his throat, feeling the weight of his next steps. The gala had been a platform for his message, but now it was up to him to forge a path forward. He felt the urgent need to refine his app, shaping it into a tool that could not only provide resources but also empower its users with agency, a revolutionary blend of technology and purpose. In his heart, he knew that the impact of his creation must resonate beyond superficial metrics of success. Determined, he immersed himself in hours of research and discussions with software developers and community leaders. He walked a tightrope, straddling the boundary between innovation and social responsibility, all while managing the pressure from his company that demanded a return on their investment. With every late night and early morning, he unearthed new layers of his character in this pursuit. He realized that patience wasn't just a virtue, it had become a necessity. The slow, deliberate process of building trust with potential stakeholders became an act of dismantling his earlier self. A man who had leaned too heavily on speed and profit. As days turned into weeks, Ethan became acquainted with a parallel reality filled with raw narratives from youth like Aisha, sharing the struggles and triumphs that shaped their lives. Their stories flooded his mind, igniting a deep-rooted desire to amplify their voices. He encountered fathers who had lost jobs, mothers who juggled multiple jobs, and children who gambled on education while ostracized by circumstance. Their collective courage challenged his perception of what it meant to be an advocate, determined to ensure that the app was not simply a product of his vision but a manifestation of the community's needs. Ethan organized focus groups at local schools. With each meeting, he absorbed critical insight, a collaborative effort born from vulnerability. He found clarity in their raw honesty, driving a wedge through his former corporate detachment. He no longer yearned for validation from his peers. Instead, he began to forge alliances with the very communities he wished to uplift, yet as his resolve strengthened, the fear of resistance began to take form. How would established moguls respond when they realized the app was not an encore of their typical profit-driven projects but a call for accountability? The thought stung, sparking a visceral conflict between his ambition and moral obligation. He questioned whether he would have the strength to face the pushback that seemed inevitable. As the app neared its beta launch, the reality of the moment loomed large. The flickering light of hope also cast shadows of uncertainty across the path ahead. Ethan stood at a critical juncture. Would he forge ahead with the same defiance and commitment, or would he retreat into the safety net of corporate allegiance? Just when he began to find his footing, an email appeared in his inbox, an unexpected message from an influential industry leader who had once been a fervent supporter of his past projects. The subject line was stark: "We need to talk. Your vision is a threat." Panic rushed through him. Could this be the confrontation he feared? Or the validation he unknowingly sought? Ethan's heart raced as he contemplated the weight of this unexpected bid. The time had come to face not only the industry's elite but also the ghosts of his previous self. What lay ahead could change everything for Aisha and others like her, but at what cost? Ethan sat staring at the email, a maelstrom of doubts swirling in his mind. His vision, something that had taken shape through countless hours of collaboration and learning, now stood on the precipice of danger. The words, "Your vision is a threat," echoed ominously, drawing him into a deeper introspection. What had started as a humble dream to empower others now appeared to ignite fear among those wielding power in the industry. Taking a deep breath, he forced himself to think strategically. Henceforth, this may not just be about the app, it was also a reckoning with his own identity as a creator. The stark realities of business were playing out in front of him in a way he hadn't fully anticipated. Were the accolades he had received merely a reflection of market trends, or had he genuinely begun to shift the narrative for good? He picked up his phone and scrolled through the flood of replies yet again. Some heralded him as a beacon of hope, while others cried out for caution. Friends encouraged him to embrace this moment, warning against suppressing his voice for fear of backlash. But what they didn't understand was the hidden complexity. He had no interest in merely being the next tech sensation. He longed for his endeavor to be a catalyst, not an accident. A pang of guilt struck him as he recalled Aisha's face, her bright eyes filled with possibility and understanding. Would she ever know the compromises that could come with success? Was he prepared to fight the systems designed to maintain the status quo? Fueled by his burgeoning clarity, Ethan decided to take a proactive approach. Crafting a response to the influential leader was paramount. His fingers hesitated above the keyboard as the fight between his instincts and the comfortable inertia of surrender raged within him. Eventually, he began to type, committing to a plea for dialogue. Their perspectives, he thought, needed merging rather than conflict. My vision, he wrote, seeks not to dismantle but to transform. Together we can be pioneers, guiding an industry that desperately needs reform. He hit send before he could second-guess himself. A wave of fear mingled with an exhilarating sense of liberation washed over him. He was no longer merely reactive, he had taken action. As the hours passed, Ethan contemplated potential outcomes. Would this individual summon allies to stifle his progress, or would they see the merit in a more inclusive roadmap for their businesses? The rest of the day unfolded in a blur of anxieties and occasional bursts of determination, but with the pressing weight of uncertainty lingering definitively in his chest. Each time he picked up his phone, he scoured it for a new notification like a hawk searching for prey. Until he received a call from one of his advisors, his pulse quickening as he answered. Ethan, I just spoke with the leader's office. They want to meet. They're serious about discussing your vision. The voice crackled through the line, the mixture of excitement and dread resonated deep within. Perhaps this meeting could offer clarity amidst the chaos. It could also leave him exposed to scrutiny from many others who had a stake in his project, both good and bad. His mind racing, Ethan envisioned the possible questions, the probing by this corporate titan. As daunting as the encounter could be, he was reminded of the lessons learned from Aisha and the other lives touched through his app's development. This was more than just a meeting, it was a pivotal moment to reinforce his commitment to authenticity. Determined not to waver, Ethan strapped himself for the upcoming negotiation. He understood that who he was in that room could set a precedent beyond profit margins. He needed to confront the barriers of fear, both in himself and in them. As he prepared for the meeting, another email silently slipped into his inbox, a message that would send shockwaves through his resolve. Initially skimming the content, vulnerability turned to caution as he processed the details. The backlash was already brewing. Was he ready for the storm that awaited him? Would he rise above the fray or succumb to the pressures pressing from all sides? Ethan glanced toward the window, where twilight cast shapes of unfolding uncertainty outside. He steeled himself and realized, this endeavor was anything but personal. It demanded everything he had. The revelation struck like thunder. He would either solidify his vision or see it undone. As he stepped away from his desk, the upcoming clash with the industry elite also meant facing the dissonance within who would emerge at the day's end must take precedence over all else. And as he readied himself for the final preparations, he heard the familiar buzz of his phone again, messages flickering through the screen calling for his immediate attention. But this time, it felt different. A voice whispered, "What if you embrace the chaos?" With that question looming, he felt an unfamiliar surge of determination swell within him as the night deepened. The moment of truth was closing in, and every decision he made now held the weight of a life about to transform irrevocably. Ethan arrived at the sleek glass office building the next day, heart pounding, mind racing. Each step toward the conference room felt heavier, laden with expectations that hung in the air like thick fog. On one hand, he felt the weight of those who believed in him, those whose lives could change if he succeeded. On the other, the dread of disapproval and failure wrapped tightly around his chest, its grip suffocating. The room was vast, filled with polished tables and walls adorned with corporate accolades, yet it felt as surreal as a stage set. Sitting at the head was the leader he had corresponded with, an imposing figure who radiated authority. Eyes like steel observed him intently, and Ethan could almost hear the unspoken doubts ripple through the air. "Glad you could join us, Ethan," the leader began, voice calm yet edged with assertiveness. "Your proposal has caught our attention, but I must admit, it has raised some concerns within our board." Ethan steadied his breath, acknowledging the importance of this moment. This wasn't merely a defense of his app, it was a chance to articulate his conviction, to redefine his purpose in a room designed to intimidate. "I appreciate your willingness to hear me out," he replied, anticipating scrutiny. "I want to clarify that my vision focuses on inclusion and innovation, not a threat to the structure, you know." The leader's brow furrowed. "Inclusion can dilute a brand's identity. Our stakeholders seek reliable market expansion, and your app appears to divert from that goal." Ethan felt his stomach clench, words he'd heard whispered behind closed doors. Yet, anger sparked, the truth lay beyond the surface. Isn't that exactly what we need? The industry is ripe for disruption. If we cling to old models, we risk obsolescence. The leader leaned back, arms crossed, a flicker of intrigue mingling with skepticism. Could this be an opening? Ethan pressed on, recalling Aisha's infectious enthusiasm as a reminder of why he started this journey. This app represents much more than just revenue. It embodies empowerment for those often sidelined in tech innovation. I believe it can drive us forward, foster a broader audience, generate loyalty from customers who crave authenticity. He could see the seeds of doubt wavering in the leader's gaze, and he took it as a cue to push further. Imagine creating an ecosystem that doesn't just profit but transforms lives. Isn't that what true leadership is about? Silence enveloped the room, thick and electric, but he held the ground. Outside the window, clouds gathered, mirroring the brewing storm within him. He wasn't here to play it safe, he was here for radical change. The aura shifted as the leader finally responded, touching on unforeseen accounts of the growing negativity around Ethan's app. Social media reacts swiftly these days. You must know that backlash could be devastating, Ethan. We have a reputation to uphold. Then let's own the narrative, Ethan said, confidence rising. Address the concerns head-on. I've seen what redemption looks like. We can turn this tide. Together, we can shape a story that isn't merely about our own interests but about the communities we serve. Interesting, the leader remarked, the steel in their voice softening slightly. You're proposing a bold course of action. Yet, it entails risks we can't overlook. Released from the confines of self-doubt, Ethan felt a new urgency surge within him. What awaited on the other side of this discussion was the potential for genuine change, but it demanded the courage to confront fear head-on. What if I accepted responsibility for the backlash? Let me partner with your team to develop a strategic response plan, he declared. Empowerment comes at a price, and I'm ready to pay it. As the meeting wore on, Ethan became more attuned to the dynamics of the conversation, navigating through negotiating demands and implications with newfound clarity. Each point he made unveiled hidden competencies he hadn't recognized before: the tenacity within, the ability to advocate and inspire in the face of adversity. Finally, the leader leaned forward, intrigued. You think you can handle the chaos? This journey won't be easy. Stakeholders won't take kindly to radical shifts without strings attached. Ethan's heart raced. Embracing chaos can lead to innovation. We must be brave enough to diverge from tradition. Let us not just exist within the industry, let us reshape it. Moments stretched thick with tension as the leader pondered the potential ramifications. For the first time, uncertainty gave way to the faint flicker of understanding. It was a chance to pivot towards the future. The meeting had become a defining crossroads. Would he cement his role as a creator of profound change or embrace the comforting arms of caution once more? But as he prepared to leave, a sudden email notification flashed on his phone, commanding his attention even as the meeting continued. The subject line sent a jolt through him: urgent backlash, immediate action required. What lay beyond his next reaction? Would he confront this new wave with the same resolve, or risk losing everything he had fought for? Ethan's journey was poised on the edge, and the next decision could very well determine whether he would step forward into a new dawn or retreat into the shadows. Ethan's heart thudded painfully against his ribcage as he read the email's subject line a second time. Urgent backlash, immediate action required. This wasn't just a call for a simple response, it was a rallying cry that echoed with all his fears and hopes. He had just spent the last hour showcasing his passion, pushing for a vision he believed could empower countless others. Now, it felt as if the ground beneath him was shifting anew. Glancing around the conference room, he noticed the leader's eyes still scrutinizing him, as if dissecting the fabric of his resolve. The atmosphere was electric, charged with uncertainty. Every second wasted felt like an opportunity slipping away, each tick of the clock amplifying his already elevated anxiety. He focused on the task at hand, determined not to buckle under the pressure surging within him. "I need to address this," he stated firmly. "We must act swiftly." The leader's brow raised, half curious, half skeptical. "You want to pivot your focus again? One email can't paint the full picture of reality." "I understand that," Ethan replied, tone steady, masking the storm of apprehension brewing inside him. "But the sentiment emerging from this backlash could spiral out of control. We have an opportunity to leverage this situation." "You mean spinning the narrative in your favor?" the leader asked, leaning back in his chair, arms folded defensively. "Exactly," Ethan affirmed, his pulse quickening as he gathered his thoughts. "Sitting back would only curate a narrative that diminishes our values. Instead, we should be transparent. Acknowledge the flaws, explain the purpose, and counteract the negativity with our vision." The conversation morphed, clashing with differing ideas. Ethan felt like he was enveloped in a duel, a clash of strategy against apprehension. He prided himself on his integrity and his approach to authenticity. The fear of exploitation pressed in from all sides, but the push to confront it doubled his desire to act decisively. Each word became a building block for his new strategy. "Let me spearhead a communication plan. We can respond directly via social platforms, host a Q&A session to address concerns personally, and create a series of posts featuring real stories of individuals impacted by our inclusion efforts." The leader remained contemplative, spine stiff with the weight of their rank. "It sounds ambitious, but what if this backfires? The same critics could twist your message." "Then we adjust," Ethan countered, his determination igniting a fire within. "But we have to start somewhere. The alternative, doing nothing, only validates the narrative that our initiative is hollow. By engaging directly, we demonstrate accountability and foster trust." Seeing a flicker of interest in the leader's gaze, he pressed harder. "This is a chance to cultivate not just loyalty, but a community around authenticity. We hold the power to redefine our brand and stand together for something meaningful. Acknowledgement is the first step toward redemption." Reluctance was etched across the leader's features as they contemplated Ethan's proposition. With every second that passed, Ethan felt himself stepping deeper into this role, a strategist, a defender of his vision. Each assertion galvanized his self-belief, refining his ability to adapt, creating an unbreakable thread between his convictions and the overhaul of an existing narrative. But just as the tension in the room seemed to reach a breaking point, the leader nodded. "It'll require an extraordinary commitment, Ethan. You need to present this plan to the board. Are you ready for that?" It was a pivotal moment, the kind of leap Ethan had always dreamed of yet never expected to be thrust into so quickly. "I'll prepare tonight," he answered, heart racing with the weight of the challenge laid before him. Yet, as the meeting wrapped up, his resolve came with an unexpected shadow. No longer just aiming to disrupt his field, he was stepping into a new role, one defined by accountability but fraught with the potential for ruin. With his phone buzzing incessantly, Ethan knew the stakes were high. Failure loomed larger now than ever, but with it came an inkling of exhilaration. He was teetering on the edge of transformation. As he left the building, a disturbing thought crossed his mind. What if the backlash spiraled beyond what he could control? The consequences of his daring choice weighed heavily, leaving him grappling not only with skepticism from without but an unsettling fear from within. Tomorrow's presentation could alter his trajectory permanently. Would he rise to the challenge, or drown in the consequences of his ambition? The dawn awaited, thick with uncertainty, and it was his moment to seize. The sun had barely crested the horizon when Ethan emerged from his restless sleep, the chaos from the previous day still swirling in his mind. He had stayed up late drafting his presentation, a cascade of thoughts that morphed from a blinding fear of failure to the adrenaline-fueled excitement of potential success. Yet despite the organized slides and eloquent arguments, uncertainty gnawed at him. As he prepared for the day, each minor task became a ritual, a way to summon his focus. He meticulously arranged the papers, his mind fluctuating between words of persuasion and the unsettling specter of doubt. Would the board see the merit in his approach? Or would they dismiss him, reinforcing his fears of inadequacy? Ethan's drive took him to the office early. The building stood like a fortress, towering and imposing. As he entered, he felt the weight of the world pressing on his shoulders. Every footstep echoed with the realization of the imminent responsibility he had placed upon himself. The conference room sat bustling with executives, all wearing their polished expressions of indifference. Ethan swallowed hard, forcing himself to remember the fire that had ignited within him just hours before. He was no longer just a cog in the machine, he was a potential catalyst for change. Standing before them, he held their attention, even if only by the sheer force of his will. He began with the backlash, a stark acknowledgement of the discontent swirling around their initiative. The data he had collated displayed a clear reflection of the critics' sentiments. Ignoring this isn't an option, he stated, meeting gazes as they flickered with interest. It's an opportunity to reconnect with people, humanize our values. The atmosphere shifted. A thread of tension transformed into something resembling engagement. Ethan powered through, outlining his communication strategy with enthusiasm he barely felt beneath the surface. He illustrated plans for social media interactions, live Q&As, and the poignant narratives from individuals whose lives had been impacted by their previous efforts. Just as he gained traction, one board member interjected, skepticism thick in his tone. You claim advocacy, yet you're aligning with the very audience that's poised to undermine us. How can you guarantee this won't backfire? Ethan braced himself, sensing the tide beginning to turn. Here lay a chance to reveal his core. Every risk carries the cost of potential loss, but it's also an investment in authenticity. By showcasing our commitment to transparency, we transform skepticism into trust. The community's response will dictate the narrative. It's time we let them in. After an uncomfortable silence, other members began to murmur among themselves, weighing his words. And in that charged moment, something snapped into place within Ethan, the realization that he could redefine not just the narrative but also his role. This was no longer merely a corporate initiative, it was personal. However, just as he reveled in this newfound clarity, another voice called out from the back, his fiercest critic, a senior executive with a reputation for her sharp tongue. And if they reject your transparency? If lockstep with the dissenting voices yields even greater backlash? Ethan's heart raced. He had anticipated this confrontation. We will adjust, learn, and adapt. Stagnation is our greatest enemy. But this is the risk we must take to foster true connections. Staying silent only amplifies the negativity. A palpable silence enveloped the room as the board members considered his defiance. Ethan felt the weight of their stares, grappling with fear but unwilling to back down. The internal struggle transformed into resolve, solidifying his commitment to transparency. This was a moment of evolution, not just for the company but for himself. As he finished, a lingering question hung in the air: had he swayed them? Were they on the brink of accepting his approach, or would he be shot down in a matter of seconds? His heart felt like it might beat out of his chest, teetering on the edge of triumph and failure. Just before the meeting concluded, he realized that his fight for authenticity would not end here. It was only the beginning. The direction of his future was inextricably tied to this moment, yet the outcome remained shrouded in uncertainty. Ethan, the chairperson began, we need to deliberate. Your ideas provoke strong responses. Can you withstand the potential fallout should this not go as planned? The air thickened around him, suffocating yet exhilarating. He had faced criticism before, but now the stakes resonated at a personal level. This was a confrontation stretching beyond the boardroom. His integrity and beliefs were on trial. Let us see what lies ahead, he finally replied, feeling the tension coil like a spring, ready to unleash the potential of future outcomes. Would they challenge him again, or would they view him as the change they so desperately required? Some answers were simply rebooted questions. As Ethan filed out of the room, a singular thought hit him with brutal force: what if his boldness was too audacious? The shadows of his uncertainty loomed large as he prepared for whatever awaited him next. Ethan walked out of the conference room, the air thick with potential and anxiety. Each step echoed in his mind like a countdown. Although he had fought valiantly for his vision, doubt began to swirl again, its insistence growing stronger. What could he really change? What if the board felt his transparency was nothing more than a facade, a smile hiding weakness? In the days following his presentation, the aftermath took shape. He was aware of a shift, subtle yet undeniable. The way colleagues approached him had changed. Eyes that once glossed over his suggestions now held a glimmer of respect, or perhaps pity. He avoided water-cooler talk, preferring the solace of his office, where he could focus on refining his strategies. But isolation often came hand in hand with a haunting introspection. One rainy afternoon, Ethan stared out the window, his mind a whirlwind of thoughts diving into the depths of self-doubt. The city below felt as though it mirrored his turmoil, clouds hanging low and heavy. His phone vibrated on the desk, bringing him back. It was a message from the chairperson, an invitation for a follow-up meeting to discuss the board's thoughts on his presentation. That simple text ignited a flurry of excitement mixed with apprehension. This wasn't just about seeking their approval, it was an opportunity to reinforce his beliefs. As he prepared for the next meeting, he began to consider what truly lay ahead. Would he stand firm, even if the environment felt hostile? Or was there a vulnerability he needed to embrace? The board reconvened a few days later, tension rising as Ethan entered the room. This time, however, there was a simmering energy that suggested they were grappling with his ideas, wrestling with the challenges he presented. He reminded himself of the potential impact not just on the company, but on his own growth as a capable leader. As the chairperson addressed the room, Ethan felt an unease rise within him. "We've debated your proposal, Ethan," started the chairperson. "While many value the concept of transparency, your ideas come with substantial risks that we can't overlook. What would you say to our hesitations?" Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the moment draw every ounce of focus to him. "I say hesitation stems from fear," he replied. "Fear of the unknown and fear of failure. Yet in this environment, we have a unique chance to lead with authenticity. By facing our critics head-on, we re-establish trust with our audience. The risk is paramount, but it's also the way forward." His voice steadied as he spoke, an unexpected flame igniting within him. The words flowed with newfound conviction, revealing a side of him that he had previously withheld. He was not just defending a policy, he was standing up for his values, a revelation enriched by the inner conflict he had fought against for far too long. When it came time for questions, Ethan felt prepared, at ease even. However, just as he was about to march boldly into this uncharted territory, a familiar voice cut through the air once again. The same senior executive pressed, "And if everything falls apart? You'll have to answer to not just the board, but every stakeholder affected by this initiative." Fires sparked in Ethan's chest. Instead of retreating, he leaned into the moment. "If that happens, it's a crucial lesson," he asserted. "Every failure offers insight into our missteps. Ignoring the risk doesn't absolve us of responsibility. We must choose this path to grow, both as a team and as individuals." The stark silence was palpable, but beneath it, Ethan sensed a shift. Faces turned to one another, concern mingling with curiosity. In that instant, he realized he had moved beyond mere survival. He was not simply making a case for transparency. He was advocating for a culture of adaptability, a chance for the company to flourish amid uncertainty. As he concluded, the arching question loomed again: would they truly see his vision, or merely recognize it as a naive gamble? Amidst the tension, a sense of clarity emerged. Ethan had not just challenged the board but had also confronted himself. He had taken significant strides toward true leadership that lay beyond any promotion or title. With the meeting winding down, the chairperson's eyes lingered on Ethan for longer than anticipated. We'll review your proposal in due course. You've given us much to contemplate. A heavy weight remained on his shoulders, yet a flickering light of potential dawned within him. He could feel the evolving dynamic, a transformation not just in his career but also within himself as a leader who was willing to embrace vulnerability. As he left the room, he pondered where this journey would take him next. The stakes now felt higher than ever, the balance between ambition and authenticity was delicate. But he was undeniably ready for the challenge. What he didn't yet understand was how far he would need to go to prove his worth. Then his phone buzzed again, another message that sent chills down his spine. It was a notification from a news outlet with the headline, "Local CEO Faces Backlash Amid Controversial Initiative." An image of him from the presentation accompanied the words, and his heart raced. Fear and excitement battled within, challenging him for what lay ahead. How would he navigate this new obstacle? Ethan stared at the glowing screen, the headlines swirling accusation and unease within him. The room felt suddenly pregnant with the weight of scrutiny, his gut instinct urging him to turn back and re-enter the conference room. But that was cowardice. He had already stood before the board, peeled back the layers of his conviction. Now, taking a step back would only serve to solidify their doubts, yet, there was that unease again. What if the backlash reached a crescendo that overshadowed his efforts for transparency? The prospect sent his mind racing. Would he be painted as the poster child for reckless ambition? The city outside continued on, oblivious to his turmoil, but inside, he felt as if he were standing on the edge of a precipice, that he needed a plan, a way to reclaim control of the narrative. He realized that finding clarity in chaos was going to be paramount to his growth. It wasn't enough to just defend his ideas, he needed to fortify himself against the encroaching storm. With resolve, Ethan picked his phone back up. Research was calling. He needed to understand the nature of this backlash with every fiber of his being. Hours passed as Ethan sat in his office, fingers tapping over the keyboard, drowning in analytics and opinions. Every article he consumed painted a slightly different portrait of the situation. Some applauded him for his bravery, framing his initiative as a progressive step toward modern corporate governance. Others, however, attacked him fiercely, invoking the familiar clichés of hubris and inviting failure. Among the criticisms emerged a new voice, particularly hostile and aggressive, a senior figure from the board who seemed hell-bent on dismantling Ethan's initiative before it took root. In that moment, reality struck him. This wasn't merely a professional conflict, it was an assault on his character. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding as he confronted the uncomfortable truth. He had pushed the envelope hard, and now it was time to confront this antagonist head-on. Fear and self-doubt sometimes masqueraded as caution, but he refused to let them keep him from pursuing what resonated deeply with him. As he steadied himself for the inevitable confrontation, a thought struck him. He needed alliances, voices to amplify his standing within the board. Everyone was resistant to change, yet change was often initiated by a single, determined individual. Singles turned into small groups, and small groups turned into movements. If he played his cards right, he could sway them in his favor. The next morning, Ethan called for informal discussions with colleagues, those he sensed might align with his vision. As he shared his thoughts candidly, he observed the faces around him. A few nodded vigorously, their expressions lit with understanding. Others were hesitant, still caught in the gravitational pull of the old ways. Yet, it fueled him. Each conversation rekindled the fire inside him, reminding him why he had started this journey. He expressed vulnerability, sharing his struggles against criticism while simultaneously inviting theirs. This practice demonstrated honesty, fostering a synergy that hadn't existed before. With renewed vigor, Ethan returned to the boardroom the following week, the intentions simmering even more beneath the tense atmosphere. He had gathered a few allies, new voices that would bolster his stance. Yet he still felt a precarious balance, as no one else would be targeted quite like him. He was the face of this initiative, and its fallout would land squarely on his shoulders. Every pulse of uncertainty could be felt trailing behind him. Confronting the accuser in front of the board would be a defining moment. It would require not only clarity of purpose but also the courage to remain authentic in the face of adversity. As he straightened his tie before entering, determination thrummed in his veins. A part of him questioned whether he was ready to stand up for the principles he had laid bare to the world. But he knew he had taken steps toward understanding. Leadership is not just position, but a journey of resilience. With breaths both deep and shaky, he walked in, ready to face the questions that awaited him. The time had come to confront not just the board, but everything he had set out to achieve. As he took his seat at the table, the sound of the door shutting echoed like a powerful statement. How would he navigate through this melee of accusations? Could he transform this moment of reckoning into a pivotal turnaround for not just himself, but for the company? Ethan felt the tension rise again, knowing the crossroads he now faced would determine his path forward. Ethan Wells stood confidently on the precipice of transformation. The weeks following the turbulent board meeting had forced him to confront fears he never anticipated. Yet amidst the swirling chaos, he had found clarity, a precision guiding him toward not only personal redemption but also a chance to influence an industry long steeped in disregard for social equity. Having rallied allies within the organization and fostering a collective vision, Ethan walked into the next board meeting ready to confront the backlash head-on. Empowered by support and shared values, he only felt solidarity standing beside him. The boardroom felt different this time, charged with anticipation. Each face held a renewed respect, a reflection of their engagement in conversations that had shifted the narrative surrounding his app. "Thank you all for convening again," Ethan began, voice steady despite the gravity of his undertaking. "I appreciate the concerns about backlash, but I want to outline how we can adapt our strategies to navigate this opposition. Each piece of criticism can be transformed into a catalyst for further innovation." Taking a deep breath, he continued, feeling the tension thrum through the air. "Criticism doesn't diminish our vision, it can refine it. Together, we can cultivate a movement for inclusion that resonates with our customers and stakeholders alike." A senior voice interrupted, the source of most of his recent resistance. "You project optimism, Ethan, but this backlash is rooted in real fear. Our stakeholders see this approach as a threat to their investments. What guarantee can you provide for our present course?" Ethan locked eyes with the executive, the challenge clear before him. "Nothing is ever guaranteed," he replied, "but I can assure you that doing nothing guarantees stagnation. We must embrace transparency not just for our image but for our survival. Let us lean into this dialogue. We can illustrate our commitment to accountability, using this as a case study in our future marketing strategies." Hushed murmurs flitted across the boardroom. For the first time, Ethan observed a shift, a grumbling realization, perhaps, that his vision extended beyond greed. He seized the moment, presenting testimonials from community members and stakeholders who had already felt uplifted by the initiative. "Here are the voices of those we strive to support. Their realities must inform our decisions, and their stories hold the power to transition doubt into trust." Ethan's words resonated, a palpable energy electrifying the room. The momentum continued to build, fueled by a mutual desire for change that lingered on the edges but had now found representation. He allowed himself a short pause, gathering their reactions. Heads nodded, and whispers of approval rippled through, an acknowledgement that he was onto something profound. With newfound courage, Ethan unraveled his next layer of strategy. "Moreover, I propose we establish a community outreach initiative, where we proactively engage audiences through face-to-face interactions and open discussions. Let us build empathy, not only with social media posts but by being present in their world." The proposal lingered in the air, as board members contemplated a commitment shift that had the potential to redefine their identity. A senior partner finally spoke. "This could change our trajectory, Ethan. Yet, how do you plan to recover should it not yield immediate results?" Ethan stood taller, resolved. "We will track the outcomes together, adapting in real time. We embrace humility, acknowledging that evolution will compound success over superficial gains. Our adaptability will inspire confidence." A round of reflections emerged, as the room buzzed with an undercurrent of hope. Each individual expressed what this adaptive approach could mean, leveraging past mistakes while investing in a brighter future. As the meeting drew to a close, the atmosphere tinged with optimism, Ethan felt a warm sense of accomplishment settle in. He had rejected complacency, he had forged meaningful connections. He had not only altered the path of his initiative but had also experienced growth within himself, evidence of his evolution into a true leader, driven not by profits but by a profound responsibility. Months later, Ethan stood at a podium surrounded by community members, Aisha by his side, her laughter a bright note in the gathering. He was unveiling their groundbreaking app, an initiative that transcended mere technology, inviting collaboration and culture. No longer encased in the shell of past mistakes, he stood as a beacon of change, confidence radiating from every corner of the stage as he shared his vision with those who mattered most. "This is about more than us," he proclaimed, his voice unwavering. "With accountability and innovation, we bridge gaps that have long divided us. We redefine leadership, transforming systems built on exploitation into platforms for empowerment." As applause echoed through the crowd, Ethan knew he had proven himself. He had transformed grief into purpose, guilt into action, and isolation into community. The weight of his past had forged unbreakable resilience within him. And at that moment, amid the warmth of acceptance and hope, he felt a genuine sense of fulfillment envelop him. This was no longer just a personal journey, but a shared triumph rooted in authenticity, courage, and connection. Ethan Wells was no longer merely surviving, he had truly begun to thrive. Now, for those who have been inspired by Ethan's incredible journey, you need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for powerful, emotional stories that ignite change. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and keep these narratives alive. And we want to hear from you. Comment your reactions and theories about Ethan's transformation below. Don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Spread the word and help us build a community that champions personal growth, innovation, and compassion.